Welcome to Garden Plants with Jim Putnam. Let's talk about color guard yucca. This is Yucca filamentosa color guard. This is a selection of our southeastern native yucca. Yucca filamentosa because it has these filaments along the individual leaves, and then color guard is the perfect name for this thing because it has this really striking variegation that really never fades. We're filming this between Christmas and New Year's as we're filming this. It looks amazing year round. You can see it's in a container, and I'm going to talk more about its cold hardiness in just a minute. This is a plant that you kind of look at and you go, well, that thing can't be particularly cold hardy, right? But this thing's hardy all the way up to zone 4. So pretty much everybody, there's very few plants I ever show that virtually everybody can grow. This is definitely one of those plants. This is a clumping, kind of a clumping variety, a little more upright and narrow, but it becomes a much larger clump in time. Really incredible plant. It is spiky, of course. I mean, I can get in here and hurt myself with this thing, so it's something you want to be careful with. But I don't think there's anything that's more striking, a more striking evergreen that you could add to your garden. So again, these Yucca filamentosas are hardy in zones 4 to 10, which is just absolutely amazing to me. We're able to keep it in this low container here, and we can move it in the garden and add it to an area where we would just want to brighten a spot in the garden. Obviously it can go in the ground and be planted there as well. Ultimately it's going to get about 3 to 4 feet in height, maybe 3 feet in width over time. You can see it's growing pretty uniform at this point. I think we've had this one for a year and a half or something like that in this container. It's just unfazed, absolutely unfazed by the cold out here. Late spring or early summer, it can get a flower spike on it that's about 6 feet in height that hummingbirds absolutely love, with these white, kind of creamy white bell-shaped flowers hanging on it that's incredibly decorative. So you can see this really striking variegation, and it may be different leaf to leaf. Sometimes they're centered in the middle of the leaf and sometimes off to one side or the other. But again, there's bright, 12 months out of the year. You can see the filaments along the edge of the leaves here, where you get that species filamentosa. And again, there's lots of these different selections out there, but color guard is incredibly striking and incredibly useful in the landscape. These are definitely going to be best in full sun, maybe a little bit of light shade on them, but you're going to get this best color in the full sun. Great for rock gardens, cottage garden, pollinator garden for sure. Again, you're going to have hummingbirds go crazy for these things. Any kind of xeriscaping or a place where you're not wanting to do a heck of a lot of watering, this is definitely amongst the most drought tolerant plants that in our garden here. Great accent plant, great for containers, and what makes it such a great container plant is I don't have to worry about this thing. It's zone 4 hardy. If that pot freezes for a couple days here in Raleigh, North Carolina, it's not going to be a big deal at all. Just seems completely unfazed by that. And then, of course, mass planted. Imagine these on a slope where it's dry and you don't want to get on there and water in the future. Imagine how colorful this is. You do have to be careful with it. It is spiny, and so I reached in here earlier and getting leaves and stuff out of it. Make sure you don't get your eyeballs close to it. If you're having to do any maintenance on it, you maybe want to wear eye protection. So this is one tough ornamental plant. Really, they're very pH tolerant, meaning alkaline soils or acid soils. The main thing is they need well-drained soils, so you wouldn't want to put this in an area that's going to stay wet in an ongoing way. So perfect in sandy soils, wouldn't have to think about it. In my clay-based soil here in Raleigh, I'm going to want to mound these up a little bit. The container mix that I have here is pretty freely draining, so that it's not ever sitting in water in this container, and really just that's all you have to think about. It's just not going to end up staying wet. In zone 4, it could be wind burned in the wintertime when the ground's frozen, so keep that in mind. You want to make sure that you're doing some watering going into winter, so it's not wet but certainly not dry, and it's probably slightly wind protected in zone 4 and maybe even zone like 5A. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to do here. You will get some dying pieces on the bottom of it, and those can just be easily cleaned off. Again, you may want to wear gloves or whatever, but And it's pretty easy just to pull some of this material away or use some sharp pruners and cut it away. But that's about all the maintenance. After the flower spike fades, you can come back in and cut it back into the middle of the plant. They're deer resistant, rabbit resistant, all those kinds of things, and drought tolerant, super showy, evergreen. I don't think I've refertilized this container. I come out here and sling fertilizer over the entire garden in February, an organic fertilizer, so some of that lands in this container, but other than that, it has not been refertilized since it was bought. It probably is ready for me to, in a year and a half in this container, to pull it out of the container and freshen the soil up some, or go ahead and put it in the ground. You know, my choice. But I've kind of liked keeping it mobile like this because, again, we can plant some little annual, this is our front garden here, has a lot of annual color in it during the season, and we can just plop this down in the middle of it, and it just shows off right in the middle of it, and that flower spike comes in above everything else. But I think other than that, I don't think there's a more useful plant, you know, slightly dangerous. You know, I have to say that, you know, wear gloves and maybe eye protection, but I don't think there's anything more useful for our garden here than a plant in a container that I don't have to worry about, that I can plop down wherever in the garden and just boom, just a shocking display of color that Color Guard Yucca gives you. So Yucca filamentosa Color Guard. Thanks for watching.